Hello, friends. Welcome to, hey, where's my camera at? Welcome to Through the Black, throughtheblack.com. That's the website. I am glad to be with you guys tonight. As you notice, I am solo. My trusty co-host is not here. Vicky Joy is having some tech problems right now. We're hoping that she's going to get them figured out and show up and be along for the ride. So I don't know what's going to happen. It doesn't sound good, but hopefully she gets it figured out. So guys, wow, we got a really great show for you tonight. I just want to mention just some of the regular things. The website throughtheblack.com. That's where you can find all of our stuff, our t-shirts, our movies, okay, things like that. Don't forget about the conference, the Out of the Darkness Spiritual Warfare Conference. Just in case you're new, okay, we are putting on a conference March 31st, April 1st, 2023, and it's going to be in Brookville, Ohio. Hey, welcome to the show, Vic. And it's going to be in Brookville, Ohio. Hey, and this is a good question. Is it anywhere close to East Palestine, Ohio? No, it's actually on the opposite side of the state. So if you're concerned about the poison air, well, I can't guarantee that, but it is far away from where this train disaster happened. Okay. So anyway, we're doing this conference. Pastor Mike Spalding is going to be there. Coach Dave Daubenmeyer. Dr. Gregory Reed, okay, Sherry Clausen, Vicky Joy Anderson, a guy by the name of Mr. Tom Dunn, Colleen James, Sean Carter, Pastor Sean Carter, okay. So the Shatter Ops team is going to be there. Kenny C. from The Rock is going to be there, also known as our co-host on Audiotopsy. So, guys, by the way, great show coming for you this week. I hope everybody tunes in. Hey, could you just do me one little favor? Could you just watch this show of Audiotopsy? That's like our least for if you've been holding out because you are a 60s and 70s fan of music, then this is your week or this is your month because we're going to be talking about music from the 60s and 70s. Anyway, we had a great conversation recording this. Comes out Friday. But anyway, hey, remember I told you Vic wasn't here? She is here. How you doing, Vic?
Hey, I like to be fashionably late. Oh, my.
Well, hey, welcome. We're glad to have you. But you know what they say, better late than never, right?
Okay, I can go with that. Just shout out to everyone, every corporation out there who is in need of hiring an IT specialist. Do not hire me.
Thank you for the warning.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to what I know. It's not that. Oh, my gosh.
Hey, Vic, we're getting ready to get into the show, but I want to mention something super cool that just happened a little bit ago.
Oh,
I got to be a guest on a podcast. It was a pre-record.
Okay.
But the name of the podcast is Revelations Radio Network News.
Okay. I don't think.
And this was so surreal because I used to listen to this podcast years ago.
Oh,
okay.
You tell me about these guys. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the last remnant of the Revelation Radio Network. Okay. It's Tim and Andrew. I used to download. This is how old this podcast is. Okay. I used to download it onto my computer, plug in my iPod, transfer it to my iPod, go to work the next day, and then listen to this show.
I totally forgot how you had to transfer it to your iPod.
Yes.
That's crazy. Oh, memories, man. Yes.
So I met Tim Kilkenny in 2010. He came to a conference I put on in Nashville, Tennessee at the, it was down in Antioch, Tennessee. It was called the Last Days Conference. I remember when we put on that conference, we're like, we're not going to make it. You know, it's like January, the conference is in April. We're like, I think the world's going to end before April. Here we are, 2023. And Andrew Hoffman is a guy that I kind of been talking about that I want to have on this show. Well, he agreed to it because he wrote a book in in 2010 that is pretty prophetic. And he's not a psychic and he's not a prophet, but yeah, it's called The New World Order and the Eugenics Wars or something like that.
Ooh, cool. Awesome. I'm glad he's coming on.
If I were to show the cover of this book, it would trigger leftists like crazy. They would go into a spasm or some kind of a state of shock. Andrew Hoffman, yeah. Anyway, that was so cool to hear their voices and to talk to these guys. I'm like, I can't believe I'm on this podcast. I can't believe it took me like 13 years to get on this podcast.
Man.
And they invited me on to talk about the revival and what happened in East Palestine. So, but regardless, and it was just like, it's like no time had passed. So anyway, guys, Revelations Radio Network news podcast. I don't know how you find it, okay? But it's out there. Check it out. There's more to that story and that network. That network is where I found Russ Dizdar, by the way.
Whoa, really?
Yes. I heard him on that network, and then there were people from all over, okay, on that network. And I said, I think this one guy's from Ohio. And he was, and the rest is history. So anyway, Vic, enough about that. We have got a returning guest, and I'm going to call her a friend of the show because she's been on before and we made friends with her. I'm talking about Michelle. Now, let me just say a couple months ago, Michelle came on and blew us away with her testimony. It was really a groundbreaking show for us because she exposed really the underground network of what's called the BDSM movement lifestyle. Okay. It was really incredible, the things that she talked about and how, kind of shocking, it was intense. Yeah. So I knew that when we had her, we wanted to have her back on, but I wanted to give her some time. Well, time's up and she's back. So we want to welcome back Michelle. Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. So, wow, it's been a couple months since we talked, and just like I was saying, the show that we did with you was really groundbreaking, and some of the things that you exposed, how this movement operates, how they work, who they were, things like this. And I want to do a recap of that stuff, but can you just share how you've been doing since that podcast? Did you have any kind of maybe struggles like spiritually, or has anything good happened, since you were on the show?
I've been struggling spiritually. I had to go back to writing my prayers when I was talking to the Lord. But it was a blessing to be able to get part of my testimony out, because God also showed me during that there's still more healing I need to go through. There's still some, more things that I need to work through, but he's working on me and I'm a work in progress. He's been really good to me.
Well, you mean to tell me that you didn't automatically become perfect when you got hooked up with Jesus?
I know, right? I didn't sign up for that.
Oh, man.
Well, I'll tell you what, we have a good group of listeners and prayer warriors, and I'm sure that they're going to be remembering you in their prayers. And, when you step out like this and expose stuff and give a testimony, we can set ourselves up for attack, but that's life. The enemy's going to attack us anyway. We have to do the right thing, and you're doing the right thing. So guys, keep Michelle in your prayers, and it takes a lot of guts and strength and courage, to step out and to give a testimony like this. So anyway, yeah, and writing down your prayers, that's good spiritual warfare strategy. I would encourage many people to try it if they're struggling in that area. So, but Vic, yeah, I'm gonna I want to recap some of this stuff, but I want to give you a chance to jump in there and just ask questions or comments or whatever.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to start by saying, Michelle, in all sincerity, if this is any consolation to you for any warfare you've suffered in the meantime, I think in the 3 or 4 seasons that Tom and I have been doing this show, I mean, we've cranked out a lot of shows, 3, 4 nights a week. Your episode was by far the most memorable episode we've ever done. Like, if there's one that pops into my mind over and over again, or a guest that pops into my mind over and over again, or one that I'm praying for, it is most definitely you. And that's not to say I'm not praying for the others as well, but I just kind of thought I had heard it all. And I had no idea that this BDSM, I just thought it was a bunch of kinky people and they got into it and they were enjoying it and it was their thing. I had no idea that this fell under the auspices of the kind of work that we do here, and that these people are in many cases traumatized, and that there aren't ministries out there that recognize this or that are reaching out. So I'm just so grateful that you were so forthright and vulnerable and were willing to come back even a second time. So thank you so much for being here.
And I appreciate y'all's prayers and advice. I remember when we got off the show the last time, you guys were telling me to write down spiritual warfare verses from the Bible, and I literally placed them all over my house.
Oh man.
I did. And but it does, it shocks me that nobody seems to talk about this at all.
Michelle, I just I wonder, like, when you're going about your everyday life, you're going to the grocery store, you're running errands, you do whatever you do, you walk down to the street or down the aisle, and you pass people. 99 probably everybody that you pass have no clue what you've been through. And I'm assuming, I mean, this is not something that that you would lead with or even share with anybody, just because of the shame that would go with this, right?
Absolutely.
So I want to recap this, and we're going to talk about these things. And so first of all, when we say BDSM, what does that stand for?
Bondage. It could be discipline, dominance, sadomasochism, masochism. It can also be bondage, dominance, slave, and master.
So you grew up in church, right?
I did.
How does a girl that grew up in church learning about Jesus end up in this lifestyle?
When I got married when I was 16. I was living for the Lord at the time, and my husband was not. We were unequally yoked, and things got very bad. I went to counseling with my church, and of course, they told me a sanctified woman could win her husband over to the Lord. So I prayed, I fasted, I did everything I thought I could do, and it still didn't work. So when we split up, I got mad at God, and I turned my back on him, and I went for anything and everything that was not him. And I wound up on a social media site, and I met someone, and we started talking, and that's how I got introduced into the lifestyle.
So, Michelle, there's so many questions that I want to ask, but I want to go here first, okay?
Okay.
Now, you admit that you were in sin, you were rebelling against God. You don't try to blame anybody else. You are very willing to take the blame, okay? But at the same time, I think people that hear your story can also see that you were vulnerable because of that, because you were rejecting God, you were unprotected, and you maybe they saw you coming from a mile away, if you've heard that expression before. And the people that do this type of grooming, they're masters at it. They're master manipulators. And this word kept coming up today as I'm doing research on other stuff, narcissist. So what I mean, does that mean anything to you, that type of personality or that type of person, a narcissist?
Absolutely. Um, and with me in relationships, that was what I attracted, was a narcissist. So, oh yeah.
Hmm. Well, and just to be clear too, Michelle, for anyone listening, when you said that you got online and this person introduced this to you, this was not a fair introduction. I think it's fair to say had no idea what you were getting into, that this was alluring. This was a grooming process. It wasn't like he laid out like, this is what's going to happen. And you're like, yeah, sign me up. But it was a very deceptive introduction. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What some of the things that kind of reeled me in was he took the time to listen to me. And where I took that as him caring, he was actually just gaining information.
Mm.
And he processed that information so quickly that he could just turn right back around and use it against me.
Yeah, yeah. So,
But
Michelle, how, if at all, because a lot of people online are vulnerable because they're children or they're on the spectrum or they're females or they're lonely. How do you tell the difference between people online who genuinely are caring and getting to know you and maybe someone who's a predator or who's dangerous? Is there a way? Are there red flags up front?
I think for the majority of people that are predators, yeah, they're red flags. But these types of people, he he changed my whole train of thought. He changed the
Mhm.
way I looked at the world. I didn't see what was coming.
Mm.
I really didn't.
So a narcissist, when you were describing this groomer, the person that brought you into this, you mentioned that they appeared to care about you and they listened to you. That's exactly what a narcissist does.
Mm.
And I think these help me out with the terminology, Michelle. These deceivers, these manipulators, these masters, they would have to all be narcissists. You could not do this unless you were.
Exactly.
Mm.
So
Exactly.
now let me just say that people that have this personality type, narcissist, they don't all do, what this person did, but this these two um things go together. So now, Michelle, when I was I'll tell you what, I never took so long to come up with a thumbnail for a show as I did this one. And I really wanted to have something that would show that would illustrate what the show was about, because I know that there are other people out there that have been through what you've been through and they don't have any hope. Okay. And I want them to hopefully see this or hear about this and click on this and hear your testimony. And I sent you, and I never do this, but I sent you the thumbnail and I asked if it was okay, because I don't want to be exploitive in any way.
Right. And I appreciate that.
So, but for anybody that's watching the show, they can't see the thumbnail. The thumbnail is a picture, and it's kind of the frame is kind of cut kind of tight, but it's a girl that has a collar around her neck that says slave on it. Okay. So, can you explain the significance of that picture and what that means, and what that meant for your life?
It meant um, that I no longer had any will of my own. They take it from you. Um, your happiness depends on them being happy. Um, nothing about myself was for me. Um, there's so many things. Like I they even changed the way I ate. They changed the way I sat. They changed the way I walked. They take it all. They take everything. And you are nothing but a piece of property to them. I was trained that at the best what I was like a show car for them to be able to show off. And I was just another prized possession. And because I was able to take pain, then that just meant I was a better show car, I guess.
So, Michelle, when you were on the first time, you explained that there are kind of maybe different roles that people in this lifestyle fulfill.
Mhm.
Um, you said some of them were like furniture,
Yes.
and some people were used for pain, and then other things. Can you explain or just mention some of those roles? So, again, we're assuming many people might be coming in for the first time, and you might see a picture of leather and chains and some kind of a dominatrix, but you may not know the truth behind it. And this is we're keeping it as PG as we can, guys, but this could be graphic for some people. So can you just explain like some of those roles?
Um, you have, like you had stated, you got human furniture where they could be a coffee table, that people would put their plates and cups on. Some people, some slaves or submissives, it's usually the slaves that were human toilets. Um, and that's basically what it sounds like. I'm trying to keep it PG here.
Sure.
Um, you have some that are only used for sex. You have some that are used for breeding. You have some that are used as pets and kept as pets in cages. Um, and then you've got slaves for pain. You have them for domestic duty. That's all they do. They clean house. Um, for any aspect of a dominant or a master's life, they could have one or multiple slaves.
So, when the subject of the book and film 50 Shades of Grey came up last time, you were pretty vocal about your just anger about that book and movie. Why is that?
Because they sensationalize it. They make it look like it's so exciting and it's desirable, but they don't you don't realize how many people you could possibly put in danger by watching that movie, by putting it out there. Because um they don't they didn't show you things where you're tied up and you can't move and you're tied up there for 18 hours, or that beat until you pass out. They don't show that. And what it does is it sets up a doorway. It literally just sets open a crack for the enemy to entice people. Like that's more exciting. That's more. But if you ever take that step through that door, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
unfortunately. You know, the biggest shock to me, Michelle, was we probably because of Hollywood, we just assume BDSM is all sexual, and which is what draws people to it, I suppose. And so to learn that, hey, if you get drawn into this, you might not get the Hollywood version. You might actually get one of these other tasks. Like that was just so eye-opening to me. But one of my questions is these masters, what put them in that position of master? Like what, because obviously they're not ever going to be the slaves. They're not working their way up from the mailroom, so to speak, right? They're never in that position. So at what point were they crowned king? Like what, are they just part of an elite social circle, or are they rich? Are they billionaires, or what makes them have this level of rank in that world?
I can only tell you my experience. And from my experience, the dominants and masters that I encountered were um, were government officials, law enforcement, military, um, doctors, things of that nature. They were well off. They had a lot of clout. They were highly educated. Um, and see, the thing about BDSM, like you said earlier, when you think about it in the beginning, it's just like a whole bunch of kink and people just get together, have fun, and that's it. That they put that out there like a mask. Like there's all these different types of mask and faces of this lifestyle. And they do that so that the real ones can do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because the majority of the people that are in the lifestyle really are just playing at it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the ones that I had experience with, they were powerful people.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, are there any like online communities or anything of other people who've come out of this community? Like, have you guys found each other, or is it rare that anyone gets out, or if they do get out, they don't talk about it?
Honestly, I have yet to find any place, and I've looked. I've looked. Um, I think the reason why it's like if they ever do get out, the guilt is so heavy because of the things that you were coerced into doing. Um, the guilt's heavy, the shame's heavy.
Mm.
But a lot of people that are still in it, they stay in it because they've spent all this time not thinking for themselves,
Oh.
being broke down, and they're like, well, if I get out, then what? What
Mhm.
do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I honestly, I have looked. I have been looking for 2 years, and I can't find anything.
Um, I want to share something just for anybody out there that would be listening, no matter what their background is. Let me just read this real quick, okay, guys, and we're gonna continue on with this conversation. Um, and it says this in Psalm 34. Hold on, I'm looking for my spot here. I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are covered. Their faces are never covered with shame.
Mhm.
So, man, that's just encouraging, right?
Mhm.
Those that look to him are radiant. And um, even though um, you and I have not met face to face, and you for very good reason. Okay, you are behind an avatar here, but um, you and others out there, no matter what's happened, can experience this Psalm 34. Okay, it's just so um, it feels so good to know that we can look to him without shame. And I just thought about that when you said that. Um, who knows how many people are out there and they're carrying this burden, okay, this burden of shame. And again, we're so thankful for you, and no doubt the providence of God has just kind of brought us all together, and we want to expose this evil. So, Michelle, you said that the people that were doing this were involved in the government. They were powerful people. Um, you mentioned doctors. The last time you were on here, you mentioned one of the people that were involved in this was the owner of or the president of a children's hospital. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So I guess you would think of somebody that was the president of a children's hospital. That kind of person would be compassionate and loving, and maybe philanthropic. Is that? I mean, tell us the truth about what you experienced.
With him, he was he was the worst out of the ones that um I was collared by. He in the lifestyle they try to teach you safe, sane, and consensual. Um, but that was not him. He the way he thought was if he had a slave, he did what he wanted, when he wanted, how he wanted. Um, he beat me so bad one time that I was completely black from my upper back all the way down to past my knees. And um, I've he I'm sorry. He he filled my body with hypodermic needles. Um, there was a lot that he did, and he he didn't care if you passed out. He would just continue to beat until it was over, until he had done spent himself.
Mm. Well, Michelle, I don't even want to ask this, but given his position, were children in that hospital vulnerable, or do they stick to their own, track? Is this something they just do in their own time, in their own place, or are the people in these jurisdictions, these police officers, are the people that are interacting with them in danger?
Um, for people like him, he's very calculated, or he was when I knew him. He was very calculated. I don't know if the children at the hospital themselves were in danger, but I do know that one of his fantasies out of many involved children. And I'm honestly just I'm trying really hard not to say too much.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, we completely understand that. So, Michelle, for maybe you can't even answer this question, but these people that abused you, and I mean, we've gotten a well enough description of their jobs and their lifestyles, and you said law enforcement. Okay, I think some of them were in the military, correct?
Correct.
And government. What do you think they got out of hurting you?
Honestly, I don't. In my mind now, I can't fathom what you can get out of hurting somebody. I think it was whatever was attached to them.
Mm,
Um, it the thing about sexual sin is, or that I found, is if you take that walk with sexual sin, that it really distorts you spiritually. It twists you, and it 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 perverts you in a really dark way, and it doesn't stop. It just keeps getting darker and darker and darker. And I think that's what's happened to these people.
mm,
So, and this is something that we're familiar with, and we warn people about often. For example, people that open the door to pornography, or it's opened in their lives. Okay, they always have to up the ante, so to speak,
Right.
and it takes more to excite them, or it takes more to to kind of fulfill their fantasy, so to speak. And it gets darker and it gets darker. And then, many times then it turns towards children, or it turns towards something that's, just obviously like weird or unnatural or a kink or something like that. So it's hard to imagine that somebody starts out as a child looking at a Playboy magazine that they got a hold of somewhere, and then they go to this extreme. And but there's a saying that we have: sin will take you farther than than you ever wanted to go. And that could be in any circumstances. I'm just um I mean, what you're describing also, Michelle, I mean, these guys sound like obviously social paths, psychopaths, like they could easily be serial killers.
mm,
Yeah, they could be. And but if you were to pass them on the street, you would think, well, that's an upstanding person right there,
mm,
because they don't they can mask it. They can mask it. And I have I have seen people come up to them and shake their hand and pat them on the back, and you know, one of them holds somebody else's child, and I'm thinking, if you only knew, if you only knew.
mhm.
Michelle, how and we already know the answer to this, but I want you to explain, how do they get away with this?
Yeah, yeah.
They're very secretive. Um, they have the money to be secretive. They have,
Mm,
like, I was allowed to go to a collaring ceremony one time, and it was invitation only, and there were um, armed guards at the doors. You weren't allowed to come in unless you had the right to come in.
mm,
It's very protected. It's very protected.
mm.
So we touched on this a little bit, but why do you think that more people don't come out and try to expose them, or even I mean, these are grounds for charges to be brought against these people for abuse, you
Mm,
know um
They're they're afraid. Like, when I was involved with the dominant from Maryland, Washington D.C. area, um, they had specific doctors that submissives or slaves went to. And the reason being, I was told, was because most doctors wouldn't understand the lifestyle. They wouldn't understand that I needed pain. So if they seen anything on me, you know, they would report it. So they had trusted doctors that could come in and treat when needed.
Hmm.
And probably those doctors was probably in the lifestyle themselves, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, Michelle, you don't have to answer this or talk about this, but I just thought of this question. And you mentioned that they use needles, they physically beat you. Did they ever use like any kind of electric shock?
Yes. Yes, they
um
did.
is there anything, and if you don't want to, you don't have to talk about it, is there anything you can share about that, how they did that?
Um, I was tied up and on my back, and things were inserted, and it was it,
Well,
it was it was pain.
sure, sure. And so I want to take a moment, and I want to fast forward, okay, to um more recent times, okay? And some of the healing that's been taking place in your life and what God has been doing for you. Um can you, because Michelle, this is a nightmare, okay? This is a nightmare, and we talk about some really crazy stuff on this show, the abuse of children and satanic ritual abuse, and just human sacrifice, and the just really bad stuff, the eating of flesh, the drinking of blood. We're familiar with it all. And satanic ritual abuse is just extreme physical abuse and sexual abuse. And we just hate it with all of our hearts, and we hate hearing this, and that's why we do what we do. That's why we stand up for the survivors, and we want to be a voice for them. So, well, I mean, our hearts are broken to hear these things, but I believe that we can't cover up these ugly things. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because um, if we don't see this, then we don't do anything about it. Okay. And by no means are we trying to be exploitive or anything like that. But I want to talk about, you meet Jesus. What, I mean, how do you come to the Lord? You say, "Hey," how do you say, "Help me"? I mean, what was that like when you finally, you know, surrendered, or you finally realized Jesus was Lord? And I realized you grew up in church, and then you turned your back, and you mentioned last time that you got into some witchcraft and things like that. But what was that time like for you?
Um, I was isolated. Um, for I can't, forgive me because my mind's bad with dates, but it was probably around 2 to 3, maybe 4 years. I was isolated. I was in a state where I didn't have any family. I had no friends in the town that I was in, and I was so unhappy. I was so tired of being angry. I was so tired of being hurt. And I tried to talk to God, but I couldn't. I couldn't. It's like my mind wouldn't go there. And I got extremely angry And I decided then that I was going to start writing down things, start out with being thankful and all that. And it took me it took me a long time, but when I the changing point for me was when I was watching YouTube and come across Russ's videos. And when I was listening to him, I didn't like him. I
When you're talking about
was,
Russ Dizdar.
yes, yes, I didn't like him at all. I had never felt so called out in my spirit in my life. And I kept thinking, okay, well, I'm going to keep watching him and I'm going to prove this man wrong. There's no way everything is cut and dry exactly like he said it was. And the more I listened, I started to feel God for the first time in so many years. I started to feel him, and I absorbed everything I could. And I poured my heart out, and I was like, I know I've done all of this. I know it was my decision. I think the guilt from me turning my back on God was the worst of it. I really do, because he didn't deserve that. He kept me alive through all of this. He kept me alive, and it was I don't know how to explain it except it was a beautiful breaking that he did to me. It was it and he started to heal me, and I still remember um the day I was praying and he told me, he said, just go and wash it off. And I went in the shower and I just started washing and praying and praising God, and whatever was attached to me let go. It let go.
It's interesting to me how many times in scripture the metaphor is used of that place of healing and surrender comes at fountains of living water or springs of living water, and it shows up in altar integration stories and things like that as well. And so I really think that there's something profound there. And as I'm sitting here listening to you, Michelle, I'm just thinking of the people that could stumble upon this show, and people who will never get into an extreme situation whatsoever. They're just getting up every day and going to work. I just want to stress how dangerous it is to flirt with those thoughts that God has abandoned us, because we know from scripture that he doesn't abandon us. And it's one thing to feel abandoned. It's another thing to accuse him of abandoning us. And I just want, for any listener who might stumble upon this, life is really, really hard. There is no end to the things the carpets that can be ripped out from underneath us, right? The unexpected phone calls and what's on the other end of that. And it's just, it is so sobering to me to see the downward spiral that the enemy can lead us down simply with the seed of believing that God has abandoned us. It's extremely sobering. It's such a fine thread that we balance on.
Michelle, I guess let me just take a real quick pause and interject this, and then we're going to continue on here in a moment. If anybody out there is listening, okay, and you can relate with this testimony that Michelle is sharing right now, and you come from this lifestyle, you have this background, you've been abused, you have been a slave in this way, let me say very boldly right now that there is freedom in Jesus Christ. He can set you free. God is bigger than your master. God is bigger than your dominant. God is bigger than any group, any politician, any police officer, any elite, no matter who they work for, no matter how much political power, how much financial power they have. God is bigger and you can get set free. Michelle is a testimony to that. I would encourage you to seek him, to turn to him, and he can help you become emancipated. So, Michelle, I'm just blown away because the only way that your story happens is that God got involved, okay, and He used that podcast or that video to reach you, and you responded to the Spirit of God. And again, we're going to get back into a little bit more of your story, but how after that time, okay, and when you had that cleansing experience, um, you have enough trauma for 5 lifetimes, okay. Um, and you mentioned at the beginning today that you're still going through healing and God is still dealing with these things, and I can imagine the spiritual stuff is the easy stuff to deal with, okay, but because we're human, there are effects on our psyche, on our emotions, okay, even the scars on our body, right, are reminders to the life that we lived before. But is there anything that you can share about how God has been healing you from this trauma?
Um, One of the main things that is a testimony of how God is healing me is when I was brought into the lifestyle, they took my name. I was referred to as girl or a whole bunch of other derogatory names. Um, the only time I was called by my name was during punishment. And after I got out of the lifestyle, I would not allow anyone to call me by my name. My friends, my family, nothing. And when I came on the show the first time, you guys asked me if I wanted to use my name or if I wanted to go by a different name for protection or security reasons. And y'all didn't know this, but that was the first time that I was able to use my name. And throughout that whole show, God, you don't understand, God was healing me every time my name was spoken. Every every time my name was spoken. It doesn't hurt to hear my name anymore. Um he's changed me in so many ways. And I have to stress this to anybody. There is nothing about my healing. There is nothing about my salvation. There is nothing about me coming back from this that has anything to do with my strength or my ability. Everything was God. I literally had to throw up my hands, get down on my face, and say, I give up. I give up. God, if I'm gonna continue breathing, you just gonna keep on pumping that air in me, but I'm not gonna move. I'm not gonna do anything. You've got to do it. And he has he has changed me so much. Like I can wake up in the morning and realize, wow, this part of me has changed. I didn't even realize it was being worked on, you know? And he's turning me into, I hope, a vessel and a tool that can help reach out to other people because it really is the truth. In our weakness, he's strong. He's made strong. He is so perfect, and he can fix anything. You just gotta let him.
I think it's so poignant what you said. I in the church, there can be a lot of shallow, like, oh, God gets all the glory, as you're signing autographs, right? But I think that so many times we prolong our own dire circumstances because we still think we can fix it or we can handle it. We're going to try one more thing. And it really isn't until we run out of ideas and just say, I can't. I mean, we prolong our circumstances when we are unable to do that. And I'm so glad that you said that, because we live in a generation now, even in the church, where we talk about how strong we are and you're a warrior and all these things. And we are more than conquerors through Christ Jesus. Like we are a strong people, we are a holy army of God. But the fact of the matter is, none of us would be in the position that we're in if God hadn't rescued us from something.
Exactly.
Michelle, your testimony of surrender and giving God all the glory and all the credit is just brings so much credibility to what you're saying. For anybody out there listening, I mean, this is true surrender and repentance.
Yeah.
And man, don't we serve a good God?
Yes,
Don't we
sir,
serve a
do.
good God that he can take the nightmare of our past and change us? And I'm just worshiping him right now and just thanking him. And Michelle, for I guess maybe one of the things that was kind of difficult to understand the first time that we talked was kind of the timeline. Like, as this was going on and you were kind of being traded, um, what was happening in your own life? Were you working a regular job? Did you have interaction with family, or were you just kind of, almost like taken away? And I guess I want some edification for the people listening. Taken away like a victim of human trafficking. I mean, where were you? Were you operating? Were you functioning in society, or how
I
how did this happen?
I was at times I had a job. I was traded out. Um, at at that time, I lived in the state that I grew up in, and either they came to me or I went to them. Um, if I was collared by a dominant that required more of my time, I didn't work. They took care of my needs financially. Um, I had contact with my family. I did. My mom prayed for me a lot. She talked to me a lot. I I'm sure she knew something was going on, but she didn't know what. And she did. She took every opportunity she had to witness to me. But at that time, I was not receptive because I felt like I had messed up so bad God didn't want me anymore. Um, I I jumped a lot of places, but as far as when things settled down, I would always come back to the state where I was born in.
Mm.
But there were times I was in Maryland, there was times I was in Pennsylvania, there was times I was in Washington. Um, so I did not have a stable life at all.
And when you were traveling or moving, did you stay in a hotel, or were you in a home somewhere, or?
Except for the one that was the president of the children's hospital. I lived in apartment or a home. The one that actually got me into the lifestyle, um, he was looking at purchasing a. I was in an apartment, but he was at the time looking to purchase a home in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, as far as finances go, they took care of all of that.
These were rich people.
They were well off, yes, sir.
So, Michelle, you talked about this last time, but for the listeners, and if this is the first time you're hearing Michelle, we would probably assume that these people that were doing these things to you, doing this abuse, were Satanists. Okay, for anybody that didn't know, can you explain what these people believed spiritually?
There is no God. There they were my God. I was trained to worship them. Um, I was trained especially to worship um, a man's reproductive part. Um, there were literally, and I've thought about this a whole lot since the last show, and it was almost like rituals, but each one had their own way that they liked things. But yeah, there was no talk of God. There was no talk of anything of that. They were my God. They were my life. They were my everything.
So these people were kind of atheistic and hedonistic.
Yes, very much so.
Okay,
Very much so.
Vic.
I was going to ask something sort of similar, and that was, I was wondering if part of the grooming process was specifically like spiritual or religious brainwashing, where like they knew you were raised in church. Were they actively trying to get you to disbelieve those things?
I'm not sure if they were trying to get me to disbelieve it, but to not put up a fight when it came up. To it's kind of like smooth it over.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
They 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 came at me with logic. It twisted, absolutely, but they did. They came at me with logic, and in the beginning, they listen to you, and they just make you feel like they care so much about you, and the whole time they're just taking notes, and that then they turn it around, and it's like, look at how, and this is not exactly how it went, but it's basically the gist of it. Look at all the bad decisions you've made on your own. Wouldn't you like to not have to make a decision anymore for the rest of your life? You've got someone that cares about your well-being. You've got someone that loves you. You've got someone that'll take care of you financially. All you have to do is trust and obey. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. Michelle, did you ever have opportunities with anyone during this period? Like, was there ever any just normal conversation, like banter? Did anyone ever just talk to you? Did you have anyone to just talk to, or was it all just the programming and the?
We did. It's different for each dominant. There wasn't a whole lot though. It wasn't a whole lot. Like they would, after a session, a pain session, they would, as they were given aftercare, they would talk, and we would talk about different things just to kind of bring me back into reality.
So, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. And this, we realize, and we can hear in your voice, the difficulty in sharing your story. well, there's a few other questions that I want to ask, and where do I go?
Mm.
So let me ask you this question: what about drugs or alcohol? How much did that play a part in your life? I would imagine there had to be some kind of painkiller.
Yeah.
Well, see that I wasn't allowed pain medication. I was a pain slave. Therefore, I had to learn how to take it.
Mm.
When my jaw got dislocated, they did give me some Advil and a beer to drink. But no, I was not allowed to be high. I was not allowed at all anything that could take the edge off. I
Mm.
had to learn to control it. I had to learn to slip in to subspace and stay there. And the more pain they gave, the deeper I had to go.
Mm. Mm.
So, okay, Michelle, you just said that, and we talked about it last time. Can you explain what subspace is? They trained you to achieve this. Okay, it's kind of like a Vic, I'm on a loss for words.
Like the disassociatives?
Disassociation is what
Yeah.
I'm looking for. So what is subspace, Michelle?
Um, for me, I was trained that when things got too painful, that I could I could disassociate, almost like cutting a light switch on and off. And the way they did it, and I don't know how that happened, but the way they did it was when I reached subspace, that there was almost like a euphoria.
Mm.
Um, Everything kind of faded out, and that was the ultimate goal for me, is to reach subspace. Now, I was trained that I was not allowed to go into subspace until they told me. If I went into subspace without permission, then I was basically jerked back into reality really quick and I was punished severely.
Oh.
So the only time I was allowed to go into subspace was like a reward, I guess.
Mm. Nice reward.
Michelle, it sounds like they had so much control over your just every move.
They did. Um,
Mm.
for example, the one that brought me into the lifestyle, he was in the government, and I hadn't spoken to him, didn't even know if he was still alive, and it had been a couple of years when I get a phone call and it's him, and I had changed my phone number, moved everything, and he told me that I was going to be expecting a phone call from the agency that he worked with because they were going to ask a lot of questions. And he schooled me into what to tell them when they called, and they did.
Mm.
And I had to do that. I, they, I don't know if they just keep tabs until they get bored.
Mm.
I don't know.
Mm.
But they did. They controlled every aspect of my life for a while.
Mm.
Um, the subspace sounds kind of like some type of self hypnotism. Um, would you does that make sense? Um, would you say that's correct or incorrect?
I I can understand where you would see that. Yeah, I
Mm.
do.
So, and again, like subspace is like a disassociation.
Hmm.
Um, the do you remember, Michelle, the first time they kind of trained you, or the first time that you achieved subspace, what that was like?
Honestly, I don't remember the first time. I've lost so many of my memories.
Mm.
Um, I do remember what Subspace felt like. I remember not wanting to come out of it. That I wanted to stay there because that's where everything was quiet. Um,
Mm.
in my pain is where I found quiet and silence.
Um, and again, this might not be something that you remember, but as you're being groomed, and as this narcissist is, deceiving you and appearing as he cares for you and listening to you, um, there had to have been a point like where I guess maybe how long were you talking to him before he said, you know, somewhere in the conversation, we're going to hurt you. We're going to inflict pain upon your body. Did that ever come up? How was that introduced, that idea to you?
It it was never like brought up that way. The one who brought me in, he spent 6 months, the first 6 months of us being together, he never touched me. Not even so much as a hug, a handshake, or anything. He did not touch me. The whole 6 months was nothing but us getting to know each other. When we started with the physical relation part of the relationship, it just started out as any other kind of relationship, but then it would start becoming a little bit rougher and a little bit rougher. And then he would talk to me about different things like endorphins being released when you are afraid, or when things don't go the way you expect them to go. And then he was looking for shock factors and things like that. um and because I was so willing by then to please him, and he was getting rougher and rougher, and of course in this lifestyle, part of the kink that everybody sees is whips and chains, you know and he just started out slowly. And because I was so willing to please him, because I needed to feel that emptiness inside of me, I just allowed it to continue.
Michelle, I mentioned a little bit ago that these people that were doing this to you, they sounded like they could be serial killers. Maybe listening to Russ Dizdar, and maybe even before this, you understand the idea of multiplicity, multiple personalities. Does that fit these guys? Because it sounds like it does to me.
I I'm not sure. Um I've never thought of looking at them in that way. Um but they definitely, well, yeah, it does, because they have masks they put on, and they can change at the drop of a hat. Yeah, they can do that. But they are so good at twisting everything.
Did you ever find anything out about them? Like, what was their life growing up like? And maybe see a pattern of why certain people did this?
There were two that actually opened up a little bit. One, the mother was extremely physically abusive, and the other, the father, was an alcoholic. And I wonder if that, especially the mother that was abusive, if that was why he felt the need that he had to deliver so much pain all the time.
Well,
Mhm.
No, I mean, no excuse for any of this and any of this abuse, but we've talked about this and we've delved into this before, like psychologically what has happened to create, this kind of person. In my opinion, these people are just one step away from being a serial killer. um, and they're serial abusers, no doubt about it. um, and who knows how many people have been hurt um, by this. So um, Vic, I'm going to give you another question. I have some questions I want to close with, but
Yeah. So, Michelle, I don't know how long you've been out of the lifestyle, and I know healing can take a long time, but have you been able to forgive these people? And if so, how in the world does such an ability, I know we've got God and the Spirit in there helping us, but how in the world does someone even begin to even want to forgive when it's this level of trauma?
At the beginning of me coming out, I was so angry um, that I lashed out at people and I lashed out at myself.
Mm.
But over time, God really changed the way that I saw them.
Mm.
And it wasn't overnight, but my heart breaks for them because
Mm.
even them, even the ones that do the harm and destroy other humans, they're still God's creation. As distorted as they may be, they're still God. God still loves them too. And my heart breaks. There's been a lot of times that I cry over the ones that have hurt me.
Mm.
There's actually been a time or two that it wasn't the dominants or masters that I'm speaking of tonight, but it was other ones that I've actually had a chance to witness to them and tell them that I forgive them
Wow.
and that God loves them too. Th-
Wow.
That's what I'm trying to get across. God can fix it all.
Mm.
I could not in my human self, in my carnal mind, would I have ever been able to forgive these people.
Oh,
But and had it not been for what I've been through, I wouldn't be able to share my testimony and help somebody else that's just as lost as I was.
mm.
There's so many hurt people in this world, and they need people to speak out. And I'm so aggravated with today's church and how we don't talk about the devil, we don't talk about the enemy, we don't give him glory. Well, excuse me, but how are you going to fight him if you don't know anything about him?
Mhm.
And unless you're willing to get into the filth and the dirt and the nastiness, how are you going to pull these people out? How? I mean, Jesus, he didn't he didn't stay with all the rich people.
No.
He was down and he was
Yeah.
this church is so lazy these days. And I just pray that more and more people will start thinking for themselves and start seeking God themselves and seeking his guidance and not what the church says is right or wrong
Yeah.
because
Thank
there's so many people hurting out there.
you. Yeah. This is a prime example of when they said, "Well, Jesus, when were you ever hungry? When were you ever in prison?" And this is a modern example right here. We know now. We were without excuse before we met you. Now we know, and someday, you know, Jesus is going to say, I'm going to say, well, Jesus, you were never in sin. And he's going to say, well, so it's very sobering because, Michelle, now that we know this, everyone who's listened to your testimony now, we're accountable for this information. And it's tough because, like you said, where do you find the people when they're brainwashed and they're not willing to show their faces? Like, how do we coax these people out of the shadows so that we can minister to them?
Honestly, I was talking with a friend of mine not too long ago, and I was talking to her, and I said, they still have what they call munches, which are meetings, and they still have um, social sites that you can go on to and meet these type of people. I'm like, well, maybe when I'm ready, God'll lead me in which direction to go, because if you were to look at me, I don't look like a regular Christian. You wouldn't look at me and think, oh, that's a Christian woman right there. So I could kind of fit in just about anywhere. And I keep asking him, use me, Lord. Don't let my story go in vain. Just use me. I just want to help them.
Well, Michelle, there are many people that are ministered to tonight, and when they listen to this 6 months from now, they will be ministered to by your testimony. And I'm sincerely blown away by the things that you've said, and especially what blows me away the most is not the abuse, it's the work of God. And you you know the same Jesus that I know, and I hadn't doubt that since the time that you and I got connected. But I I just I just love hearing about the good works of God. And the Bible is full of testimony of his great works, and the world is full of testimony of his great works, and you are an example. I feel, this subject matter is real dark, obviously, and anybody listening tonight, they can hear uh me just being real clumsy and just trying to be as respectful as I can, and asking questions. And I'm also just kind of bracing myself because it hurts to hear about this. And I'm not only doing that for me, but for the listeners out there. I know this, that they can feel this, not in the way that you did, but we hate to hear of other humans abused. But again, folks, we cannot stick our head in the sand. This is a reality. There are people that experience all kinds of horrible things, okay? And we could talk about drug abuse, we could talk about cults and spiritual abuse and so many things. This is another thing that we can't ignore. And I just am so thankful that Michelle, that we got connected and that we're able to help you share your story and your heart. And your heart is to sincerely help other people. And that's why you just fit in here, because that's our heart. Um, I just, I think about this all the time. I say, Lord, I don't know what to do. I just want to help people. Can I do a
Exactly.
YouTube show? Can I do this? Can we do a conference? Can we do whatever? I just want to help people. So God bless you, sister. And I tell you, I want us to kind of close out saying a prayer tonight for you, and for God to use you and to protect you, and to heal you, to continue the healing.
Mm.
And also for anybody out there that could be listening. So I'm just going to ask anybody that's in the chat, that's listening in the archives, even to join us in prayer. Vicky, would you mind starting out and saying a prayer for Michelle?
Absolutely. And Michelle, I just want to, before I pray over you, I want to share with you something that helped me. It says that Jesus is our faithful high priest. He's gone through everything, endured everything that we went through, and that's why he can mediate on our behalf, because he doesn't expect us to do things that he couldn't do. The most meaningful thing to me all growing up was that Jesus had scars, and he had them on his face too because of the crown of thorns. And when he came back in a resurrected body, he kept those scars. He showed them to Thomas. And it was so meaningful to me that Jesus had scars on his face. And when Jesus was on the cross, he was beaten to a pulp. It says in Isaiah 53 that he was unrecognizable when he got off that cross. He was beaten, stabbed in the side, crown of thorns, mocked, ridiculed. He has endured everything that you endured, and he is your mediator. And I just want to encourage you with that he doesn't make any of us endure things here on earth that he himself didn't suffer also. He understands. So
Absolutely.
our Father in heaven, we just come before your throne, and Father, our hearts are so heavy, but in this world we live in, it's so full of triviality and everyone just seeking pleasure and fun and laughing. And even our sermons have been reduced to movie clips and jokes. And so it's okay to every once in a while bear a heavy weight and to be sobered by the things that are being endured by fellow saints. And so, Father, I just thank you for an opportunity to feel this weight, to be rescued for an hour from the triviality and fakeness and stupidity of the world. Father, I just pray that you would bring other people out of the woodwork. I pray that you would shed a light on this community, that you would expose the darkness, and that you would set captives free, expose the deeds of the devil, set captives free. And Father, in whatever capacity you call Michelle to be a part of this setting of free of people and of ministering to them, I pray that you would continue to heal and strengthen and equip her for that part you have for her to play in it. Father, we just pray that your name would be glorified. The name of Jesus would go out into the world. The deeds of the devil would be exposed and captives would be set free. Continue, Father, to heal Michelle physically, mentally, spiritually. I pray, Father, that the God of hope would fall on her. I pray that you'd give her rest and strength, and that you would fill her life, Father, with people who are genuine embodiments of love, not the false, deceptive kind of love that these masters offered her, Father. I just pray that your will would be done in this matter, Father. I pray that we wouldn't walk away from this and just go and run and flip on YouTube and return immediately to the triviality, but that we would churn this feeling and this weightiness, Father, into productivity for the kingdom. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Michelle, if there would happen to be anybody out there listening that is caught up in this lifestyle or something similar, what would be your message to them?
It will still be the same as it was the last time we talked. You are worth so much more than what you're living in. God loves you and he misses you, and there is no depth, no darkness that he can't reach down and pull you out. All you have to do is just give it to him. Take that first step and he'll take the rest. And I need to say this. I've had y'all say that this is a heavy subject, and I'm sorry. It's a heavy subject. Um, it's not heavy to me because God's worked that healing inside of me.
Mm.
But if we as Christians don't get serious, things are not going to get any easier. It's time. It's time to take a stand, however that may be. However that may be, it's time. Quit being lazy. Do something.
Awesome. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. I have no doubts that the Michelle is going to be back in the future, and we're going to keep connected with her and see how God is using her, and see how God is healing her. I am just excited and full of hope for her future, for her ministry. Thank you guys for subscribing and sharing and everything that you do. Guys, when you share this, people get the message. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's caught up in this BDSM lifestyle. It can be anybody. This message is for everybody. Okay? So, guys, God bless you. Michelle, hang on right there. We're going to say goodbye to you after the show. And folks, don't forget, tomorrow night is going to be the Reclamation Project. Okay, we'll see you then. Bye.